So even if you're an incredibly powerful and ancient vampire, there's still some demons you just can't defeat. Hello everybody and welcome to another light novel review. In this video I am going to be covering the latest volume in Nisioisin's Monogatari series, this one Onimonogatari. This one released in English by Vertical. If you want to pick up your own copy, I've got links to Amazon and the book depository in the description down below. This volume pretty much picks up where Kabuki Monogatari finished, and so that means that it takes place before the previous two volumes of this series. And in this one we have Araragi finally trying to return Hachikuji's backpack to her. Yes, that's right. If you remember, he had said backpack, and well, it's really not been mentioned for a couple of books now, but in any case, he runs into Hachikuji and he's like, you know what, let's get your backpack to you because you can't be much of a snail if you don't have a big shell on your back, which of course leads to the usual inane banter between the two of them. Although, for some reason, Hachikuji seems to be a little bit more thorny today, a little bit grumpier and angrier and short and sharp with her responses. As the two of them are traveling, they're suddenly confronted by this mysterious entity, an entity that just seems to be like darkness, which is essentially what Araragi ends up calling it, the darkness. Well, the two of them make the executive decision to hightail it the heck out of there. Eventually, they are saved by Ononoki, the undead aberration who has been in town with, well, it's so complicated with these characters. Anyway, Ononoki ends up saving the two of them and transporting them to the Cram School remains. And it is in the Cram School remains where it becomes apparent that Shinobu has actually encountered this darkness before. In fact, she encountered it when she first visited Japan hundreds of years in the past. And so the book then has Shinobu relating the story about the darkness, about this entity and about her first visit to Japan, why she was there, what she did. So a lot of the book is actually Shinobu relaying her story about her time in Japan. And then we have Araragi and company fleeing to try and find another expert. This one, Izuko Gaen. Gaen is apparently a contemporary of Oshino and all the rest of them. And so, you know, Ononoki seems to think that she might have the answer. And so we have our heroes, characters. Are they really heroes sometimes? I don't know sometimes. In any case, we have them striking out to try and find out more information about this darkness to see just how they can survive its seemingly endless onslaught. I found that I really enjoyed this volume, and it's a kind of tricky volume, and I don't mean tricky as in, you know, it's hard to get into or anything like that. I mean it's tricky in that Nisioisin pulls some tricks. So we've already been told in the past that aberrations cannot tell the story. They cannot be narrators. And so Nisioisin circumvents this by having Araragi the narrator of this volume, but a vast majority of it is Shinobu talking in first person. Basically, it's like she's talking to us, the reader, as if she was the first person narrator, but you realize that it's really her talking to Araragi, and where Araragi would, as first person narrator, would respond to the audience saying things like, you know, oh, you may think this or you may think that. Shinobu does the exact same thing, but she's talking to Araragi. So it's kind of this funny way that Nisioisin has circumvented his own rule so that he can allow an aberration to tell her story in the first person. And of course, Shinobu is an incredibly fun and an engaging character, this laissez-faire attitude that she has towards the world and existence, and finding out what kind of person she was even before Kizumonogatari, where, of course, at that point she was, suicidal, basically. We find out more about what she was like as Kishot back in the day, when she was full of confidence and in her absolute glory in terms of her power, and just how ridiculously powerful she actually is. I mean, there are examples of her power that are used in this book that she's approaching godlike abilities, basically. There's also a couple of tricks in terms of circumventing your own expectations. Nisioisin sets the book up in a certain way to make you expect a certain thing is what's happening, and yet he kind of turns it on its head. And it still works because you realize when you get to the reveals that they make sense. You realize that there are things that have happened throughout the book that all fit with the explanation you're being given. But it really, I have to admit, it surprised me when I got to the end of the book and kind of realized what this was really about, because I did not see it coming. And when I looked back on it, I was like, wow, it's actually kind of obvious. I don't know how I missed it. So I found that really entertaining. Perhaps the one, well, maybe there's two downsides to this book, and I'm going to try and not be heavy spoiler on this, but the one thing that I didn't really quite feel was adequately explained was Hachikuji's different temperament in relation to Araragi in the beginning of the book. As I said, she's quite sort of thorny and angry and terse, and even Araragi mentions a number of times that she seems a lot more confrontational and angry than typical, and that their banter is not as fun and lighthearted as it usually is. And while I do have my own theories about why that is, and I feel that there is evidence in the book to support those theories, it's never really outright stated. And I think that was a little bit of a missed opportunity in terms of the character development that we see throughout the volume. I also feel that there could have been more done to really make the end of the book resonate more emotionally. Again, I don't want to spoil it, but I mean, there was this sort of there was this kind of like heartwarming, touching moment at the end of the book, and I won't say I had no feels, but it just kind of felt to me like it could have been even more. It could have been earned or a little bit more than what we got. And again, that I know that's kind of, out there, but if you've read the book, I'm sure you kind of know what I'm talking about, and if you haven't read the book, well, I haven't spoiled it for you, at least. The other trick of this book is how it kind of settles into two different timelines of the series. So the majority of the book is taking place right after Kabuki Monogatari, which means that it is set substantially before the events of Hana Monogatari, and it is also set before Otori Monogatari, which was the last volume that we had released. However, just to kind of trick things up a little bit, the epilogue, the last chapter of the book, is set after the events of Otori Monogatari. So the book actually straddles over a couple of different volumes in terms of where it sits in the timeline. So it's not like it fits nicely just in one spot. Part of it is here and then the other part is there. And the epilogue in general, it's very interesting. Again, something that I don't really want to spoil, but it has suggestions of, well, a couple of different things. It has suggestions that maybe Araragi is a little bit smarter about a particular thing that's going on. It also kind of suggests something fairly large about a character that we've seen bits and pieces of throughout the last couple of books, but they haven't played a huge role. And again, I don't want to spoil it, because when you get there, you'll kind of be like, oh, yeah, it's kind of like an aha moment. Overall in this volume, and in particular, I would say even in the epilogue itself, we have world building still going on this late in the game. I mean, we're about 12 volumes in. So we have this new situation that's created in this volume. This sort of, I don't know really how to explain it, and I certainly don't want to explain it in the most obvious way because it's huge spoilers, but it really does suggest that there is a natural order in play, and that even though aberrations seem to be, well, just that, an aberration, a set outside of the natural order, they may not be quite as outside of the order of things as we think. And again, I don't know how much this series will explore that idea, but certainly it sets it up in this book. And I really found this one very, very cool. I mean, first of all, of course, we have Shinobu so heavily featured in the book, which is fantastic, especially with a good chunk of it as kiss shot, meaning that she is just absolutely, yeah, just such an amazing character. We've got this world building aspect, and we have some really kind of like decent emotional payoffs in a lot of places as well. So overall, this was a really good volume. It's kind of interesting to read it though, because Nisioisin several times makes reference to the fact that Kodansha, which is the next book in the series, is the end of the series, which of course we know is not true because it's gone on for, I think, at least another 10 volumes or more beyond that book. And of course, this volume still features all the fourth wall breaking and talking about things. And I actually love how now Nisioisin even is playing with himself. Like, not only is he toying with the whole anime aspect of things and all that kind of situation, but then he's also talking about, because this book takes place before the last two volumes, he has characters mentioning things that happen in those volumes, and has Araragi talking about how they're going to create a paradox and all this kind of stuff. Just, you know what, I mean, it's your typical Monogatari series book, and it's just a hell of a lot of fun. For my next read, it's going to be something that's really different. It's a murder mystery by the author of The Empty Box and Zeroth Maria. This one, Masquerade and the Nameless Women. That will be my next review. In the meantime, thanks so much for joining me in this video. I look forward to seeing you in my next one. Till then, bye-bye for now.